So while people are joining, thank you very much for agreeing to meet with me tonight. I'm a massive fan of what you and Louise are doing and Sabre Rights UK. Excellent work, absolutely excellent work. Really, everybody's noticed it. The Trafalgar Square thing was absolutely awesome. That was a love fest that day. Absolutely brilliant. The big one was it the 29th of August was the big one? Is that the biggest one?
Uh, 20, I think it was the 26th of August.
Right.
So there were two. To be honest with you, I think the second one was the biggest one.
Yep.
We never managed to really get a count on the numbers. For me, it was looking out on a sea of people. People have said that there was between 45 and 50,000 on the second one. I never got the numbers from the first one, but yeah, it was definitely an experience to see such a sea of people in Trafalgar Square all together. It was probably one of the best days of my life, to be fair.
Yeah, well, it's one of the best days of our lives because the one on the 26th was on the run up to one that we were doing on the 5th of September. And Ireland had done theirs the weekend before, and then you guys were doing your one. And we were all we had our one coming up. And I think it helped galvanise the troops. You know, we didn't want to let Scotland down either. You know, you guys had turned up in force, turned up in numbers. You got the boots on the ground, and it was absolutely brilliant to see. But all of them were going well then, Vince, weren't they? It was, the police were to a certain extent accommodating. I know you guys were putting in risk assessments, and you were doing the right thing because it is your legal right to protest, and you covered all the bases. You did it correctly. You worked with them. There was no chance that you were bringing a troublemaking crowd, that's for sure. You know, and neither were we. There was no chance. We weren't going to be pulling down statues or doing any of that kind of stuff. It was just people were not happy with what's going on. But so the first one that I watched, and I think that was the one that there was a lot of good speakers there, and that's the first time I'd seen you on the stage. Had you done any protests or activism before that?
Um, we'd done a few. I mean, when I first started with Louise was doing a little protest on the beach in Brighton with 6 people watching her.
Yeah.
We did a few after that, small. There was sort of anything between 200 and 500 people were many of the protests that we were going to. We did quite a few in Brighton, and we were traveling around, really just getting a feel of how many people were in agreement with what we were saying, and it was incredible how the numbers built up after such a short period of time, and it just shows you back then how many people were wanting to express their voice and how many people were really upset over what was happening and how many people actually saw what was going on quite early.
Yeah.
There was there was a momentum gathering in Hyde Park every week. If you remember, in the early stages of lockdown, people were going to Hyde Park, and there was only sort of like 50 to 100 people turning up at Hyde Park, and there was a lot of arrests going on. And people saw that as something that was never going to work, and there was a lot of people ridiculing that type of protesting. But even that proved itself to be the correct way of going about things, because someone had to start somewhere, and the momentum that built up from those small protests into what happened at Trafalgar Square,
Yeah.
and the march, and I mean there was 3 Trafalgar Squares, but the momentum that built up was incredible,
Yeah.
and we achieved an awful lot in showing. I know the media obviously tried to play everything down, but I think it brought the nation together in a lot of respects, in realization that there's a lot of people out here agreeing to the same narrative that's a completely different concept and narrative from what the mainstream media are portraying. And it opened the door to many people getting together in small groups, large groups, small protests, large protests, and it gelled people together. And you know that hasn't escaped us. I speak to many people every day that are still friends, still working together, still got a great bond from, you know, those protests. So you know it really achieved an awful lot more than people probably think.
Yeah, and before that, Vince, like before, you know, the coronavirus, COVID lockdowns, had you done any protests, like any activism before that?
Well, I was very mildly involved in a little bit of vegan. I'm a vegan, so you know I used to feel strongly about it. You know, and I was one of those mad vegans for quite a while, but nothing to the extent of what I was involved in last year. It was all new ground to me, and I've
Yeah.
got to be honest with you. I used to think that protests. I used to ridicule protests, and I used to say, well, why are you even bothering? Because the government don't listen. You know, actually, my ex-girlfriend was a vegan. She used to go on all the big vegan protests, you know, and you know, she would come home and I would laugh at her and say, "What are you doing? You just wasted a day." And I never really truly realised just how much, you know, people coming together on the street and voicing their freedom of speech together collectively means to human beings.
Yeah.
And it's not until you sample it and it's not until you join in with it that you have the realization of, in some respects, an electrifying atmosphere of like real strong frequency joining together in human beings. And yeah, I mean, it's actually addictive because it's such a coming together of people.
Do you think to an extent that's why they don't, you know, that's why they're coming down hard? They don't want that electric vibe in the air, you know, that feel good factor of people coming together and that humanity, you know, hearts beating at the same time, all of the things that we talk about. Do you think there's an element of that they're trying to stop?
Look, I truly think that there are people, there's a select amount of people that are very sinister in this world, that are in it for, you know, in all this for the wrong reasons. And we could sit here all night and try to get to the bottom of who those people are. And, you know, what there's been a lot of talk about this. In reality and in truth, seeing what I've seen over the last year, I feel that there are a lot of people that truly believe their own perception and truly believe that they're doing the right thing. And, you know, we know that it's kind of now converting into, if you like, a two-tier social system of where you've got one set who much, I guess we're the minority, and you've got a mass that believe the government narrative. And the government, I think, really, a lot of them believe that they're doing the right thing in terms of we're handling this the way we handle it, and we need to keep these people off the street because they're messing it up. And I've spoken to a lot of police in quite open, very decent conversations, because not all police are thugs and not all police are bad people. You know, I'm never going to portray that.
Yeah, of course.
I've spoken to a lot of police who had an open conversation with me, and you know, were very honest about what they said, and they truly believe that there is a virus. They truly believe that, you know, a lot of them wear the mask. They really are set in fear, and they think that, you know, they need to stay away from people. They think that we're doing wrong by going onto the streets and joining together because we're going to spread this virus. You know, a lot of them truly believe that there were a certain amount of thugs, and we saw it, and they were just there really to be thugs, and that's the case. But in general, I think that there is a mishandling by the government, and that is the main thing. I think that there's been a huge mishandling. I think that the representation of the mishandling has really gone to an extreme of where society just doesn't understand what's going on. And, we've been led to believe so many different aspects of what's going on by an information war. The mainstream media are milking it. We don't really hear about anything other than what's going on in the media, than COVID and vaccinations and all the rest of it. So I don't necessarily think that there's a huge amount of sinisterism as much as there is a misconception and a misunderstanding by everyone. And we as a society, we need to start establishing some ground to walk on, because, this whole sinister divide that is being expressed is actually less sinister than what we think. And it's much of society not being able to comprehend and misunderstand in itself the complexity of what's going on, and kind of taking sides over it. And we really need to come away from that, and we need to start acting in a much more of a loving way to all of humanity. Needs to start joining together in a much more loving aspect. And you can see, if you go back to Trafalgar Square and you go back to the marches that are happening, and you look at a lot of the protests that have been going on, there's an awful lot of love from the people that have been arriving on those streets. They're not thugs. They're not unintelligent people, and they're not people that want to cause trouble.
No,
they're
definitely
people
not.
that are very, very, very upset about what is going on, and actually are so desperate to. And I met a lot of people that had never been on protests before. Really nice people, really private, timid people that felt that they had no choice but to come back on, to get themselves onto the street and express their voice. And, I think that there's a big misunderstanding by the government in how these people feel. I believe that the mainstream media are probably the most sinister people in all this, because they're sticking to this ridiculous narrative, and they've pumped out a huge amount of misinformation, and I've been subject to that, and I've been evidence to it. A lot of what has been written about myself and Save Our Rights and the groups involved is complete misinformation, and so there is a narrative being set by the mainstream media, the papers and the television, that is incorrect. But I don't think, in honesty, a lot of people might not agree, but in honesty, I think there's much more of a misunderstanding than there is a sinisterism.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I mean, you speak to some of the police at these events and things, and they definitely believe it. And if they're thinking you're out there, as you say, potentially spreading it around when, you're in a tier 4, and it's getting much, much harder to I mean, in the current climate, it would be impossible to pull off a Trafalgar Square type event just now, wouldn't it?
Yes, it
has.
Yeah,
in many ways, Vince, you'd be public enemy number one if you were to pull something like that off now, and that's another challenge, So it's a sort of, it's a smarter game. Just to look at the Trafalgar Square thing, as I said, we were on a build-up. I'd never been on any marches before. My wife had been on it. She went on the march for the Iraq War. And like yourself, I was always... I used to watch the Iraq War thing, and I was watching the news, and I was bought into the reasons why. And she was out marching with hundreds of thousands of people to protest it. And I was kind of saying, well, I'm buying all the stuff. She was right and I was wrong, to be honest, 100%. And she was out there marching. Now, they got a good run at it. There was no, you could get a march going relatively easily. They could hit the streets, but they never achieved anything. They never stopped it. you know, and that to a certain extent is also a result, because if hundreds of thousands of people hit the street and the government still don't listen, then hundreds of thousands of good people know that the government have not got their interests at heart, and they're not listening to common sense, and they're not listening and representing the people. These are results, you know, just people getting together. All of these things are really important. But your Trafalgar Square thing was very important to us in Scotland because it coincided with our first big event that was coming up. And we had Dolores Cahill coming, we had Malcolm Kendrick, doctor, Paddy Hogg, a politician, we had all sorts of great speakers. We got the weather. It was looking, everything was looking good. And our eyes were on London and Dublin because we wanted, you guys were getting off out there before us. And we were desperate to see how it went. And they went brilliantly. And we're left thinking, right, we now need to pull Scotland. It was extra pressure because we wanted what you guys had already delivered, and we got it. It was brilliant. It was we got as good. There was 2,000 people for a population our size. Extrapolate that out to London, it was the same as 25,000 people.
Yeah.
If you look at it like that, it was a good day at the office for us. If people weren't so scared of the police, it could have been 5,000 people, and for us that would have been absolutely amazing. You could not have got a better day. Not one arrest, Vince. Not one. Nothing. It was a love fest. It was a Mardi Gras. It was absolutely brilliant. So thanks to you guys, because vibe in the UK then, because we were standing up to it for the first time, and it was really quite important. Now I saw it. I'm going to put this in the stream if you don't mind. It's a little clip. Now David Icke's in this clip. Now you get people. David Icke gets his fair share of crap, but it's the first time I'd seen you on the stage, and Louise, and I'd seen Kate before, but this was the first time I'd seen you guys in action, and Piers was there as well. But I'll just put this up just because there's a little interesting clip here that I really like, and I don't think I want to talk about this anyway, but I'll put it in the screen just now. So if there's any justice in this world, this should start playing.
I lost you a minute ago. Hopefully we didn't lose people, but
that's okay.
Yeah, go for it, mate. Go for it.
Percy Shelley understood this when he wrote 200 years ago his own so appropriately named The Mask of Anarchy. Rise like lions after slumber in unvanquishable number. Shake your chains to earth like dew, which in sleep have fallen on you. Ye are many, they are few.
Did you hear that okay?
I actually didn't. I hope other people did. I heard the first sort of couple of sentences, and yeah, I don't need to be reminded of Mr. Icke.
But but that sort of ye are many, they are few. You know that it kind of captured the essence of that sort of spirit of rising up, and to a certain extent, that's why they don't want you rising up. So as we're in it, we've got a conundrum that they don't want us getting together to protest the very thing that we're protesting against, which is the whole overreach situation. Now, you guys have done some great work at Save Our Rights. Now, tell me about some of the upcoming stuff that you've got, because you've got some. I don't think there's any big protest planned, is there, or is there? There's nothing major coming up.
No. I would disagree with you. March the 20th is, I think, probably one of the most important days in the world right now.
Okay.
You know, I'm on a group of where I noticed today, I looked today, there's 40 countries that are all protesting on the same day.
Yeah.
And I've had notifications that there are countries joining every day, and they're organising themselves, and they don't care about what happens. And they're organising a protest in these countries which is based on love and peace. And in the UK, whether the government like it or not, I think the UK is going to recognise that it's been a year since all this happened, and I don't think whatever the government or police intend to do, I don't think they're going to take that away from people, in that people want to express themselves on that day in freedom. And I think you're going to find that there's a lot of people that are going to attend protests on March the 20th. I've already spoken to many people who are saying that, it doesn't matter what happens, we're going out on March the 20th to do something. And I think it's going to be a very important day for England, and I think it's going to be an important day for the world.
Mm-hmm. Good. Now, with regards to the sort of Save Our Rights name, that one of the things I liked about it is it's a great name, Save Our Rights UK, because that is basically the battle that we're up against, isn't it? You're trying to protect your rights. No jab, no job, Vince. That's a major problem for a lot of people. There's people who are feeling that pressure just now. You've got kids being forced to wear masks at school. Where's their rights? You've got kids who couldn't go to school. You've got the right to go to another country without a vaccination. All of these things are coming into play. Your right to protest. Save Our Rights is a great name because it's our rights that are worth fighting for and worth protecting. Would you agree with that?
I mean, look, there's many different aspects of saving our rights, and there's a lot of stuff going on that is affecting many different people, and it's, again, the media have portrayed what these people have been doing for the last year as these vermin spreading, ignorant, shouldn't be on the streets, on the fringe of society, no hopers. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you, I have met so many academics that have gone on these protests. I've met so many people in very intelligent jobs. I've met a lot of people that have been affected in many different ways by what's going on. Like adults and children, shouldn't really be alone in hospitals. Even for things like that, that's unacceptable. A lot of old people have been dying on their own in hospitals, in isolation, with their families not allowed to be with them. That is really a deprivation of human rights, and we should have had a say in this. There's even the concept of fear that has been driven by the mainstream media is an interference on our really our soulful human rights, if you like. Isolation is not conducive to wellness. It's not conducive to health or healing. It's the opposite. And a lot of people have been isolated against their will, with the order that if they don't continue to be isolated, and it's a long period of time, that they're going to have a punishment, and that is just that I am really, really opposed to when it comes to. I mean, look, I can handle it. I'm only young in comparison to someone who's 70. People that are in their older stage of life, they're really suffering, and they're not allowed to have visitors. There's been all sorts of mishandling in terms of what they can and can't do, and the rules that they have to adhere to. Families are suffering greatly. You talk about the vaccine, and we could talk about that all night, but you know, when it comes to it, bodily autonomy is just a foundationally basic human right. It's our God-given freedom, you know, and I don't see that anyone has the right to tell us what we can do with our body autonomy and start to punish us for what we don't do when we've been told to do it. That is a severe infringement on human rights, and that's really, you know, I'm in favour of rights because human rights right across the board are being literally disrupted and taken away from thousands, if not millions, of people across this country and across the world.
Yeah.
And you know, we have to come together in realization that this isn't just about a virus. There is a level of control going on here that is way out of proportion, and we could try to excuse it as a mishandling, and you know, given the very benefit of the doubt, you could probably try, you know, in best you could excuse it as ignorance and mishandling. But we can clearly see in terms of the legislations that have been pumped through, and the amount of control that is being set before us, that there is an element of where they're taking advantage of the health factor and really putting in a lot of stuff that I think would have taken them years to establish because we would have rejected it. And that they're bringing in too much too quickly for us not to notice. And I think even the passive people of society that were sitting on the fence, the people that take the vaccines, the people that wear the masks, are even recognizing that, hold on, something isn't correct here. Sorry, my dogs are just barking at.
Sorry.
Mummy's in the kitchen, mate. So, yeah, I mean, even individual protesting and standing up for our human rights is, you know, is something we all need to be doing now, because if we don't do it, this is going to slip past us, and we're going to, you know, before we know it, we're going to be living a life that is lacking in every single freedom. You know, it really is a concern, and you know, people need to recognise it much more than they are.
Yeah, and we chatted earlier when we were trying to get online, you know, about it's all consuming, this game. You know, once you start to see what's going on, everything else kind of pales into insignificance. You know, working, and you know, I've not really worked that much in the last 2 or 3 months actually with all of this going on, just because it takes over everything. It's a real challenge. But how do you see it? How do you see this sort of emergence from lockdown? What do you think's happening here? Do you see this as a good thing? Do you think they've been on the money with us, or do you think it's a kind of they're forced to do it because people are pretty much starting to go out and do a bit of what they want anyway?
Well, look, people are only going to take so much of sitting in their homes and sitting in their own prison. The world is a free place, and it's a beautiful world that we live in. And you know, look, the minute that we all start to see death as a fear, not to live life, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
And you know, the amount of fear that has been set is out of proportion to what in my opinion, out of proportion to what is happening. I think many lies have been told, and I think, you know, there's much evidence to support that misinformation is at an all-time level. And you know, look, if we just look at the basics, why should we be punished for the fact that in the beginning the government were 3 weeks late? Even if there was the worst pandemic going on in the world, which there's not, The government were 3 weeks late in dealing with it, and they've been chasing it ever since, and they've never been able to really come away from the fact that the borders weren't shut down. People were coming in. 105,000 people per day were still coming in the borders. They decided not to shut the borders down, and they mishandled it initially for a long period of time, and we've had to suffer for that. We've been victim to that because they've chopped and changed their minds so many times about everything that they decide to do, and we've had to adhere to it, or we have these beautiful fines and punishments and all the rest of it. So eventually, they're going to have to start letting people out and opening things up. That was always going to be the outcome. And, they're doing it pretty strategically. We could discuss all night whether it's viable in terms of what the people think. I think the whole thing has been a farcical circus. It's been beyond ridiculous and beyond insanity for me personally.
Yeah.
And but there are. We have to respect that there are a mass of people that live in fear, and really believe that the government are taking care of them. And I'm not going to moan at those people. I'm not going to call those people sheep. There's still other humans in society that, for me, I've still got to try and treat those people with as much love and respect as possible. And I'm not going to enter into division and start calling them names. There has got to be a society understanding of this, where we do take the initiative and we don't just get told what to do. And yeah, they are going to unlock, so they say. And obviously, they can't keep people in for the whole of the summer. People are never going to agree to that. And we've already seen across England and across the world that people are not going to take any notice of this. And, we've had statements from the police to say that it's unmanageable. You can't keep going around giving people fines because they want to go up the local park. It's just got to the point of insanity. So, yeah, they're going to have to start accepting that the people have a say in this, and the people need to start having a much bigger say in this and letting the government know that actually, do you know what? It's our body, and we are able to make the decision to go out to the local park and drink a cup of coffee with my friend, and we're not committing a crime, and we're not virus spreading scumbags for doing that. And we're just normal human beings that are actually fed up with this. And you know what? We'll take our chances. Thank you very much. We don't want to be punished.
Agreed. And that's kind of like that insanity thing, some of these rules. I mean, they're the rule in Scottish pubs and restaurants, Vince, where you couldn't have any background music on. No background music, no TVs, no sound. Now the public are a bit punch drunk with all that's going on. The fear factor, people are punch drunk. I think years ago, if anybody had tried to pull that one out of the bag as a rule, that nobody would have accepted it. But I think in the grand scheme of being hit with so many different rules that they can, that their behavioural scientists are looking at it and saying, we've got away with another one, let's try another one. And they're getting away with there's almost like nothing they could do that they're not going to get away with. People will go to the parks, but they're not actually breaking the rules. They might not go out with their local district. They won't go to their friends for dinner, Vince, most of them. They won't hug their mother, and they wouldn't hold their dead granny's or dying granny's hand. There's still a lot of people who are under that sort of spell that nothing goes back to normal until the government say, right, you can hold that hand again, or you can. Things like, I hate headlines like, you can sit on a park bench from the 20th of April or something like that, and you can have a picnic, but it's one person from another those type of rules, that is insanity. We need to get the people's feet back under the table and start getting some accountability with these guys and saying, right, we don't want to live in this way. with these rules, because the bar is set so low, mate, that they are going to pull this back out for if there's a big, it's like the boy who cried wolf. If there's a big flu strain at the end of this year from anywhere, the bar's set low, so low they're going to dust off all the directions in the supermarkets again. They're going to dust off the masks, all of that stuff, test and trace everything. These things are all there for a reason, and this COVID passport is the thing that's the bane of my life just now, because you're seeing it being subtly, you see the psychological behavioural side of it, and I don't like to be watching it because I see it working. Vince, it's a problem. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, Martin Luther King Jr., who's one of my heroes, you know, one of his statements, he says that our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. Yep. And, you know, if we keep staying silent, and if we don't take the initiative and start to govern our own autonomy and our own rights to freedom, our own way to live in this world, our own society outlook, and you know, keep leaving it to the thoughts of the people that control us, then we're doomed. Mm-hmm. And you know, society has to come together. It's kind of like, you know, you saw World War II. Society came together because it was a big problem. Mm-hmm. And the problem isn't the virus. The problem is the way that we're reacting.
Yep.
We've not reacted as society that recognizes common sense and takes the platform and says no when someone is insulting our common sense. And for me, our common sense has been insulted for quite some time. We all know that every single person in this country, if they would, I think, questioned on a lie detector test and said, do you think something's a little bit amiss here? I think every single person would say, well, yeah, but I'm just going with the flow because, you know, I'm used to being told what to do and I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And we have got to establish some ground to walk on ourselves and stop being told what to do by people that do not have our best interest at heart, because 100% categorically I can state that, you know, my personal experience tells me they do not have our best interests at heart. It is a pretense. And you know, look, we're cattle. I'm sorry, we're cattle, and we've got to start taking the brand off of being cattle and stand up for ourselves in this. Yeah. And you know, society coming together in small, even if it's 200 or 300 people that are meeting in the park on a Saturday afternoon, and just saying, you know what, it's my right to meet in the park this Saturday afternoon, and I'm going to do it. And no one's going to stop me. And
do you think they're more on you?
I want the sunshine. I want the sunshine on my face, and I'm entitled to it because that sun belongs to me. It doesn't belong to the government. Yep. People need to start just seeing the beauty of the world and common sense, and get back to human functioning, because we're being treated like robots.
Yeah, I think if people who believe as we do and who want to get out and do something, if we get out at every single opportunity and you're talking to people and smiling at them and they can see your face, and we're acting very normally, we've reclaimed our normal, and there's maybe 4 or 5 of us or more than the rules would allow, but there's other people out there, and there's 2 of them for talking sake, because that's the rule, and they're sitting on a park bench or they're having a picnic because that's the rule. But they see us not doing it. That slowly leads to more people doing it, saying, do you know what, let's invite the other 2 over as well. Why do we need to just keep it to 2? And slowly but surely, people are afraid, Vince, to even say something on Facebook. They don't want to say anything against it. Even at work, there'll be guys sitting there in the canteen at work or not sitting in the canteen at work. They were sitting in a Zoom meeting, listening to their colleagues, and they want to say something about it, but they're scared to be ridiculed. These are little moments of truth for guys to stand up. It's a protest. It's one guy saying, that's my truth. And you can call me a conspiracy theorist. You can call me whatever you want. But I made this comment on Facebook to say, I am not happy with what's happening in this country just now. I'm not happy with these reactions. I'm not happy with kids wearing masks. I'm not happy with no jab, no job. That there must be people really under a lot of pressure, Vince, and I can see it happening. And after a year of pure pressure, they want to add all of these pressures on as well. It is a crime against humanity, and humanity, as you say, it has to get together. If we can find a middle ground, because the challenge is the mainstream would probably like to stand shoulder to shoulder with us if they thought it could change it. But they see things like and it's by design, the police running in and doing their stuff in places like London or whatever. They see that. Nobody in the right mind in the UK. Joe Bloggs doesn't want that, Vince.
No.
He doesn't want to be a part of that. That's when people will get there when they're at the precipice. But we need them to join us now because we're at the precipice.
Well, I mean, we've been there for a while because, you know, in many forms, our freedoms have slowly been taken away, and it's been quite sneaky the way that it's gone about its work. You know, willful ignorance is a thing, and even though I've spoke to a lot of men who are my friends, and you know, I'm outraged by it all. And you know, I meet with my friends, and they bring it up, and as you say, it's very, very much like, well, you know, we know it's here, and we know it's a thing, but it's the elephant in the room, and we don't want to bring it up, and you know, let's just talk about something else today.
Yeah.
And you know, this is going on a huge scale because it's becoming a sore subject, because the discussion leads to such diversity, and so people get heated, and so people are keeping it under their own radar and staying quiet, you know, and it's the wrong thing to do. People need to start exploring this much more, and talking about it with a little bit of love and respect and compassion for someone else's opinion. And as you say, you know, the biggest thing that is going to be a factor to this is discrimination, and discrimination is starting to seep its way into this situation. We can see it clearly. We can see the advertisements going on where they're slowly bringing in the fact that, well, you know what, you won't be able to go on holiday unless you take the vax. You know what, you won't be able to go down the pub unless you've got some silly little gadget on your phone that says that you're what you are. In terms of COVID, this is all starting to be recognised now, and I think it's bringing a lot more people into the recognition of, hold on, this is getting a little bit out of hand.
Because we were saying all of that maybe 8 months ago. We were saying this is where it's going to go, you know, and people were saying, I remember saying it to guys, and they were saying, you're off your head. You know, like tinfoil hat, everything can be called all the same names you've been called. It's very repetitive. It's horrible to listen to. You could almost second guess what they're going to say, but we were right, so right, and we're still right, and it's there. Those COVID passports, Vince, are breathing down our necks, mate. Now, I've got a young son in Australia. He's 21, and I said to him in March last year, I said, I don't think I'm going to see you again. I said, because I don't want to take it, and I don't want you taking it. And I think that's the way I think this is the way it's going to go. He said to me, don't be daft, Dad, it'll be fine. I'm saying, I'm telling you, and it's the biggest driver for me. That's the biggest driver for me. I used to go, the only thing I used to ever have to think about, Vince, was the price and the time. Look at what I have to think about now. I have to think about potentially not seeing my son again. How bad's that? How many other people like me might not be able to go to America to see their family, or they might not want a vaccine, but they'll just take it so that they can go on a flight, or they can keep their job, or they'll make their kid wear a mask to school just so that they can go to school, but they don't believe in it. Or even worse, and this will be the line for the UK. This will be the line. Your kid has to take the vaccine and you don't believe in it. You're not anti-vax. You just don't think it's right. It's rushed. It's not you'll take your chances. You're right to take your chances. And it's that discrimination that can come against those kids and these problems that are coming. They're looming, mate, for us. And that's a major challenge. If people could join us now and it was more mainstream, you could change that. You could push against it. Once it's in, it's very hard to reverse.
Yeah, very true. You know, I've spoke to hundreds of people. I literally get hundreds of messages every day of where people have been not only losing their jobs. I mean, look, 270,000 businesses across the country have been shut down. You know, that's a very, very high figure and a very detrimental effect on society and the economy and the comfort functioning of society. So, you know, it's plain to see that there's a huge impact gone on. And look, you know, I got a message from a friend yesterday who was at work in a charity organisation, and VaxTrack came up on her computer, which is just like just randomly came up, which is an app. I'm not a technical man, but it's basically an app which the people that employ people need to use to start tracking people who have had their vaccines. And you know, there are hundreds of people that are losing their jobs because they're getting told, well, look, if you don't take the vaccine, then you can't come back. Now this is wrong on a scale. This is morally very badly compassed, and not only morally badly compassed, but is a frightening prospect for people who, you know, what are they going to do when they're out of work? How are they going to survive? What is their future going to be? You know, are they going to sign on universal credit? Is that what we're all going to do? If we don't take the vaccine, we're going to go on universal credit because we can't have our jobs back. You know, well, how much does universal credit pay? Pittance. What are people supposed to survive on with their families? This is not. This is very, very badly handled yet again. There's been nothing set in stone from the governments to actually tell us categorically that, hold on a minute, none of this is happening. It's all very vague. The explanations that we're being given from the start are all very vague. There's a lot of lack of information going on about our futures, and there's a lot of anxiety going on. There's a lot of people that are very scared. A lot of people that are suffering from mental health issues because of it. You know, there's suicides going on. You know, this is getting out of hand. And if governments are going to be governments, they should be recognising this. And as you rightly said before, you know, we went on the streets of London in thousands in drones, and they still didn't want to recognise it. And that says something. That says that they're out of touch with the man on the street. So, you know, what do we do about that? We have to take matters into our own hands and say, you know what, we're going to organise ourselves. If you're not going to recognise us as human beings, then we'll recognise ourselves as human beings, and we'll react. We'll react the way we need to survive, because you're not only discriminating against our health, you're discriminating against our everyday freedom to live in this society. And that is unacceptable.
Totally.
Everyone needs to know that is unacceptable. So unless we get absolute confirmation that that is not going to be the case, and that we're not going to be discriminated against, and that, you know, this stuff that's being brought in is going to stop, then people need to start coming together in society and saying, well, do you know what? Enough is enough. What we're going to do, and start finding solutions to live in it, start making up community assemblies, if you like, of where we have to say.
Yeah.
That's what protesting does. That's what protesting brings together. That's what me and you talking about brings together.
Yeah.
We need to start communicating like we did before technology came in and ruined it all.
Yeah. Yeah, ruined it for me tonight. The technology working a wee bit later, but we got there in the end. But no, I totally agree that sort of local community assemblies, you know, assemblies of the people, citizens assemblies, whatever you want to call it. You know, government being more accountable, or the people being the government. You know, they're meant to represent us. We can't even do a petition. You know,
Yes.
the police say to you, don't go on a protest. Go on do a digital protest, because we're in a pandemic. So do a digital protest, and then they take your right to digitally protest away. What is that all about? You know, this is why that gives you a reason to go and protest on the streets, because at the end of the day,
Yeah, correct.
You can't digitally protest. We're getting shut down and censored on Facebook. Even that thing that happened to you the other day, and I don't know if you want to touch on that, because it's you know that the local paper, you know, had one of those stories, Vince, that's out of all proportion, but it's there to make someone like you shut up. That's what it's, because you have to still walk down the street and see the neighbours, and you know, nobody wants that, really. Nobody wants that kind of attention, because you can't control what they wrote. You don't have a platform to go back word for word and say that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. It's been presented in a certain way. That's the power of that weapon that's been used against us, and that has to change as well. There's so many things that we have to change as a result of this, but I'm a great believer just now in how do you get the mainstream to join with you, because you really need a lot of them to start stepping up and saying, at least just saying they're not happy, because they've been very silent, a lot of them. They haven't even uttered a peep, Vince.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there'll be a time of where if we carry on speaking out, there'll be a time where we cannot be ignored. And you know, the mainstream media will we know that they're owned by corporates. We know that they're controlled to a very large extent. And in some respects, we've got to keep speaking out on social media. Social media is becoming the mainstream media, and people need to communicate it on social media in the right way much more, and express themselves and start to stand up for themselves and use social media to do so. Because let's make the most of this this cock up and use it to our advantage, you know. But you know, taking away the mainstream media, there's nothing like the power of people getting together in love. There's nothing like the power of people realizing that they're on the same page and starting to really come together in action and sticking by it and not saying no. And we're being left with that. As you rightly say, you know, nothing that we're saying or doing is really being recognised, and censorship has gone to an insane level, which really gives a set, you know, that sets an alarm bell off when you're being censored to an insane level, and you're being not given any avenue to be able to have your say. That's when democracy has just been literally stripped of society. And yeah, we have to find a way to stand up against that. And it is only for me, the only way that we're going to do that is to start breaking our barriers down, to start taking them down and to start talking to each other much more as the people on the street that have got a big problem, to start organising ourselves much more without the fear of being punished. You know, if we want to do a protest or we want to meet, then let's just do it. And you know, we can't keep being scared of what the repercussions are, because we're never going to get to the end product. And you know, if it's as important as it should be, then we must stand our ground and learn to say no. And we must ignore the, as you say, look, they did newspaper reports, they hammered me in the papers. It was national papers, local papers. Do you know what? I don't care, because you know what? They can make me look they can do what they want and make me look however they want. I stand by my own truth, and I know that truth, and that's all that matters. And everyone has to stand by their truth, and that really is all that matters. We were all given this inbuilt radar system in our gut feelings to know what really is truth and what isn't, and you know what resonates and what doesn't. And none of this has resonated for me from day one. None of it has resonated as any sort of truth. And you know, I stand against this for so many different reasons, and I will continue to do so. And I said on my Facebook post, you know, the best thing they can do is come and kidnap me and put me down, because I'm not going to stop until, you know, something changes. And what needs to change is that the level of control needs to be taken away, and people need to take that away themselves. They don't give you back your freedoms once they've taken it away. You have to take it back yourselves. And you know, society has got to be brave in doing this. You know, and the people like the old boys like me and you, 54 years of age. If we have to give up our lives to do it, and we have to set the example, and we're supposed to do that because we're men of the world, and
absolutely,
and, you know, men of the world need to set an example. Then that's what we must do, and that, as you said, is much more important than a job or an income, or it is the most important fundamental value in the world. Because once we lose our freedoms and our rights, we're not living.
So I think everybody, I mean, there's a big element within the movement of people of awakened truthers, whatever you want to call it. They're not buying all the government narrative, and they want their rights back, and they want their normal back. They want their lives back, Vince, if you want to put it like that. They want their lives back. They want the control to end. They want the fear to end. Even within the groups, that members of groups that would be in our group, they might still be reticent about turning up to events, you know. So there's a captive audience there that we're speaking to just now as well. You know, they have to be brave, as you say, and say, look, there's strength in numbers. We're all going together. They're not going to single out you just because you turned up. Everybody's thinking their heads on the line that day. There's not a person who goes and doesn't think it's going to be you, you know. That's the fear that they've got us under. That's the spell they've got us under. That's where they want you. They want you to be in that situation where you don't turn up because you're too scared, and then the numbers are not there. That's what they're trying to achieve. If the members of the groups, now there's some high membership across the board, they're almost there. They believe what we believe. They need to turn up. They need to be brave enough to say, I'm going. All of them, as many as possible. So let's bank them. Let's say they're in the bank now. There's a not that one sentence going to put them in the bank, but let's mentally bank that there's work to be done on that. That's demographic, and that they need to be whipped into a frenzy to go, because there's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, Vince, in our groups across the UK. Literally hundreds of thousands, you know. If you got half of them, there'd probably be 500,000 in groups, I would say easily 500,000. Then you've got the people who are just had enough now. The enough is the enough is starting to get into it. But we need to be more joinable. If they don't want to join up with basket cases, Vince, they don't want to be part of that. But we're not like that anyway. We're not daft. You've got professionals, you've got doctors, you've got scientists, you've got policemen, you've got lawyers. We are a broad section of society. They present us in a particular way. The media presents us in a particular way so that people don't join us. We look too toxic. We're the furthest from toxic that you could get.
Yeah.
And when people and when you find that out is when you turn up to an event. Because that's the beauty of the event. You might not change the world that day, but you change that person and they want to do it again. You did it a year ago and you've not stopped. You've given up everything to keep doing it. Look at that. I've not worked for the last 4 months, and it's not bothered me. I've not made a penny.
No.
But I don't really care. But I need to start making some money soon, right enough. But we'll get there in the end. But this is far too important. Far, far, far too important. Vince, I wanted to sort of finish there because obviously that's us hit the hour mark and we took 20 minutes to get going. But I could talk to you for ages on this stuff. Highlights and lowlights for you. You've been there. You've been at the front line of this stuff. And again, I tip my hat to you for what you've done. It is amazing what you and Louise have done, and that team there, absolutely brilliant. So well done. But just very quickly, the highlights and lowlights of the last 12 months for you in terms of your own personal journey.
Well, I think the most important thing for me is people as individuals need to be recognized for what they go through, and people I've spoke to so many people on protests. I've spoke to so many people individually, and it's not just about us getting together as a mass. So many people are doing things individually that are not necessarily recognized, and it might be that they're just telling their friends at work, or it might be that they've decided to go and put 20 leaflets in a letterbox. Mm-hmm. It might be that they're getting brave enough to do a Facebook post. Mm-hmm. And if they click the grief, well, okay, I'll take it, and I'll lose friends over it, because a lot of people are being scared to stand on their own truth. Yeah, and I've experienced so much of this, and once you start to stand on your own truth and come out and just say what needs to be said, it's very clear to see that other people are inspired and influenced, and we're all so different as individuals, and it takes a lot of variation of people to be on the same page before a lot of people get on the same page. Mm-hmm. Because, as you say, maybe you could label me as a nutter. All right, well, Vince is a nutter, but I've just seen 200 other people saying the same thing as Vincent. So is he such a nutter? And the way that we portray ourselves as well, we need to establish to the mass that we're just normal, decent, intelligent people who don't want to cause a stink and are doing little bits and pieces in our own way just to help our brothers and sisters stand on their truth, and that is what it's all about, really.
Yeah, 100%.
It's to stand on our truth in love, in honor, and try and recognize the other individual for what they are. And if someone is so scared that they feel that they have to wear a mask, then don't hate them for it. Mm-hmm. And if someone's so scared that they feel that they've got to rush to the hospital to get a vaccine because they've fallen for whatever spell they're under, or they, they really feel that it's valuable, then let's not hate them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And let's value everyone as an individual. Each and every one of us is important.
But we need that reciprocated, don't we? On the they've got to respect. They've got to respect us.
That's right. That's the only way we will get reciprocation, though. Is if we're not labeling, getting angry, and we're just standing on our truth and representing ourselves in the right way. And I think that's what a lot of people have been doing, are doing, and must continue to do. There's been some great people speaking out. There's been some fantastic people, just nice, intelligent, respectable, credible people in society speaking out and saying, you know what, this is wrong. And we've got to continue to do that. And as individuals, if we carry on doing our utmost, it maybe you can't go to a protest all day because it takes too much out of you. Well, then do something in some other way. But everyone needs to act, and everyone needs to come together this year to make sure that towards the end of the year, the government know that this is going to be difficult. We're not going to be able to set the amount of control that we thought we were going to set. And we need to take back the initiative and say, this is our life. We don't mind. It's all right to have a government, but, to a degree, you've overstepped the mark. You've mishandled. So do you know what we're going to take? We're actually going to take our autonomy, our lives and our rights into our own hands as much as, is respectfully possible. And stop living in this fear, because fear is so bad for our health. We cannot be scared of this anymore.
Yeah, and that reciprocation goes to the government as well, Vince. They want us to behave in a certain way. They've got to behave in a certain way. They work for us. Vince, thank you very much. I'll, as I said, sorry about the mix-up with the product or the software at the start. I don't know what happened there. It's very weird. Never happened before. Put it down to me. But it was great, and I'm glad we managed to persevere and to get this chat, because it was very, very good, and I could talk to you for much, much longer. If you and I stay on, I'll end the live now, and then you and I can just sort of wrap up offline. And but sorry to everybody, I'll do some things to make up for that, to push that into all the people who maybe missed it. There's a few people who might have missed it, so I'll work on this after this and get this link out to people who might have missed it, and hopefully they can burn some midnight oil on it tonight and watch it later. But listen, thank you, Vince. You're a star. Please pass our regards on to Lee's as well. And I'm going to send, obviously, Save Our Rights UK.co.uk. Excellent website if people can go along, and there's loads of ways you can join and donate and support. And I'll put that in the links as well. So I'll do a bit of work on that over the next couple of days, Vince, and the groups that we're in, and push that stuff out there. But as I said, thank you again, and we'll end that there. But it's been an absolute pleasure. It's
been an honour, mate. It's always an honour to come and talk to. I mean, we've never met before, but it's been an honour, and it's much appreciated. I really appreciate your time, and much love to everyone out there.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vince. All the best.